context of why we are doing this. Tomorrow in class, you are going to be writing a paragraph, an exit ticket essentially, about this short story. You are going to be, on Thursday when you have class, you are going to be highlighting literary strategies that the author uses, which is what we are going to be annotating for when we read. So you guys have already read this once, that's why we're going to be looking specifically for literary strategies. Okay, so starting off, I'm going to sort of start us off together. So when I first look at the story of an hour, I first think to myself, this has to be, like this must be something, an event that happens within 60 minutes. So that's in my mind as I'm about to start reading. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard, I'm circling Mrs. Mallard, I know that this is our first character. You need to make sure it writes down. Was afflicted with a heart trouble. Raise your hand if you know what afflicted means, Javiana.
Like she had it, like.
Yeah, like pained by. She was like, plagued with heart trouble. Great care was taken, Arbella tracking up here, to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. This really is just an intro to the situation. I know suddenly that she is dealing with her husband dying. I haven't yet really highlighted for Belle any author strategies yet. Ever, will you take over with it was her sister Josephine?
It was her sister Josephine who told her in broken sentences. What's the other word?
Veiled.
Veiled? Hints that revealed and half concealing. Her husband's friend Richards was there too, near her. It was he who had been in the newspaper office when intelligence of the railroad disaster was received, with Brantley Millard's name leading the list of killed. He only taken the time to assure himself of its truth by a second telegram, and it has, what's that word? Hastened to a forestall any less careful, less tender friend in hearing the sad message.
Okay, raise your hand. What's just generally going on in this paragraph?
Ooh!
Go ahead, Jackie.
Introducing Brentley.
Okay, good. Who is Brentley?
Her husband's friend.
So Brentley is the husband. There's one other character.
And Richard.
Very good. So Richards is her husband's friend. And what background information are we figuring out? Oh, Jay, stay with me. Joshua.
Well, something we learned here is that he sent a second telegram to make sure, because maybe results were inclusive or something, so maybe foreshadowing something come up later.
Very good. So Richards is the one that finds out about the husband's death. Okay? He finds out that it was like some railroad disaster, and this is how he died. If I'm highlighting some author strategy, I circled here the word veiled. When I see the word veiled, I think of either two situations. Kevin, track up here. Either someone who's getting married wearing a veil, or someone who's where? Where else do people wear veils?
Church. Funeral.
So this is very, it evokes the imagery of a funeral. Okay? So I think that specific type of diction is very, very purposeful. Yes, Arjun?
Did you word veiled in the Persepolis? Like that book Persepolis?
Yes. Good connection.
Wait.
In this case, it just means like covered hints. So they're trying not to tell Mrs. Mallard about her husband like outright. They're trying to be sort of like hinting about it so she doesn't get too shocked. Kevin, head up. Marbella, read us paragraph 3.
Ow, ew. She did not hear the story as many women have heard the same with the paralyzed inability to accept its significance. She wept at once with sudden, wild
Abandonment.
in her sister's arms. When the storm of grief had spent itself, she went away to her room alone. She would have no one follow her.
Raise your hand if there's anything about this style of writing that you noticed. Jose,
The storm of grief or something.
what is
like that.
storm of grief?
It's like a personal deep feeling.
Good, and personification here. So The storm of grief, usually a storm doesn't really have grief, but they're making a personification using that figurative language. What else might you notice in this paragraph? Let's hear one more comment.
Ooh.
Yeah, Jackie.
Yeah. You wanna go? Okay.
Go ahead, Elijah.
Oh, really? Okay. What I was saying was that she was very heartbroken by what happened.
How do you know?
Because it said she wept at once with sudden wild abandonment in her sister's arms. In a
Okay.
storm of grief.
Very good. So she wept at once with wild abandonment. So she's having some very, I'm just gonna write strong,
Feelings?
sure, or like strong emotional reaction.
Oh,
The
yeah.
only thing else I want to point out, make sure you're writing this down. RJ, I need you to get with us. She did not hear the story as many women have heard the same. So for some reason, Mrs. Mallard didn't react to the news of her husband's death the way that people would expect a wife to. That's all we know as of now. Joshua, read us, there stood.
There stood, facing the open window, a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by physical exhaustion. It haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul.
Provel, you have the demerit, I need you to get with us. She could see in the open square before her house the tops of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. I'm going to underline that. I think that's really sensory language, like you can taste the air. Also very vivid imagery. In the street below, a peddler was crying his wares. The notes of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly, and countless sparrows were twittering in the eaves. This vivid imagery sort of catches me off guard a little bit. Like, I don't know why Kate Chopin is necessarily describing this detail, so I'm going to just sort of leave it and then go back after. Luis, read us the paragraph starting, there were patches. Kevin, head up.
There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through
If
the
you wanna get
clouds
with
that
us.
had met and piled one above the other in west, facing her window.
It's a gloomy day.
Keep going, Javiana.
She sat with her head down, thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quiet, motionless, except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her as a child who had cried himself to sleep continued to sob in his dreams. Why did they call him a child of Eve?
As a child who has cried itself, because you don't know if it's a boy or girl. Esteban, what do you want to comment on this paragraph? Marbella, head up.
It has love suddenly compared her to a child, the way she's like suffering and then the child cries after a bad dream.
Okay, very good. Everyone writing this down. Compared to a child, and this is obviously speaking about Mrs. Mallard.
Wait. Is Mrs. Mel old or young?
Probably in between. She's married, so she's not super
grown
young.
old.
Right, but she's not super old. Yes, Josh.
I think something I saw is that, you know how children, sometimes when their family members die, they don't really know what to react?
Yep.
And in the beginning, when she found out her husband died, she reacted differently. It's kind of like children, they don't know if you're happy or sad. It's kind of weird. It's like they don't have to take care or worry about somebody, but they're sad at the same time.
Beautiful.
Joshua
Joshua Merritt, great job. She was young with a fair, calm face whose lines bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off yonder on one of those patches of blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspension of intelligent thought. Kevin, I need your head up. Okay, so all of a sudden Mrs. Mallard stops, and in my opinion, Kate Chopin's tone shifts. Mrs. Mallard doesn't seem like depressed and like she's like breaking down and having a breakdown because of this death. She has suddenly a suspension of intelligent thought. I'm gonna underline this. It's unclear if Mrs. Mallard is like happy or sad or what's going on. So like thoughtful moment for Mallard. Elijah, take over. There was something. Kevin, bottom of the first page.
There was something coming to her that she was waiting for with her for what is it she did not know. It was too self-stoked and exclusive to name, but she felt it creeping up the sky, reaching toward her through the sound, the sense, the color,
important moment.
It all
Jose,
goes-
what's happening here?
That she's like, I don't know.
Reread it.
You got this.
There was something coming to her and she was waiting for it, fearfully. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle and elusive to name. Subtle and elusive is like she couldn't tell what it was. It was just like creeping on her really lightly. But she felt it creeping out of the sky, reaching toward her through the sounds, the scents, the color that filled the air. Jose, what do you think is happening? Edward, help us out. I saw your hand.
I'm thinking part like someone's gonna tell her the news about her husband dying later, and like she feels
RJ,
like
try.
the presence of her husband like next to her or something like that.
Okay, so she's feeling some presence. Jose, do you agree?
Yeah.
Jackie, add on.
So, on the first sentence, they used personification and extreme exaggeration of what's happening. So that made the whole, like, the explanation of what she was feeling a little bit more understandable, because, like, she had said that it was creeping on her, so it's something that makes her feel uncomfortable, and it, yeah.
Beautiful. Now her bosom rose and fell tumultuously. Raise your hand. What is tumultuous? One of our vocab words. Javiana.
Does it mean like she felt loud? I don't know.
Tumult can be loud. What else can it be? Call it out. Wild. It's like chaos. Chaos,
Oh.
exactly. So her bosom is like her chest. Now her bosom rose and fell tumultuously. She was beginning to recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her, and she was striving to beat it back with her will, as powerless as her two white, slender hands would have been. So whatever this feeling is that's coming, she's trying
Divided.
to fight back this feeling. I think this is also, Kate Chopin is giving us this foreshadowing of something that's coming. She's like about to reveal to us what this feeling was. Kevin, make sure you're writing this down. Flip over your paper. Go ahead. Angel, do you want to read us when she abandoned herself?
And she abandoned herself alone with the word escaped her, silently like she said over and over under her breath, free, free, free. The vacant stare and look of fear that had followed the look in her eyes. These great, keen and bright, yet closely contrast in the piercing glance. Warm dim lights urgent to the fire.
Kate, this is the moment. Why is she yelling free, free, free? Kevin, I need you to sit up. Marbella, why is she yelling free, free, free?
She's a free woman.
Why is she a free woman?
She's not married anymore.
Okay, so all of a sudden, she's free. Because she is no longer married, because her husband died. We're gonna write because,
Is that a good or bad thing?
well, like, it's supposed to be bad when her husband dies, but she is all of a sudden realizing that she's like, what was the thing that she was feeling? What was the
Heart
thing
attack.
creeping up? What?
A heart attack.
No, not yet.
So it is gonna happen.
Joy. So this thing that was creeping that she couldn't tell what it was, she was actually really happy.
So she got possessed.
She was like possessed. But I want to highlight the type of diction. The type of diction that Kate Chopin is using: keen, bright, relaxed, warmed. These are all very positive. I'm going to write a big plus sign here. All of a sudden, we realize that this woman actually is happy that her husband has died. She did not stop to ask if it were or were not a monstrous joy that held her. A clear and exalted perception enabled her to dismiss the suggestion as trivial. Provel, read to us starting at she knew that she would.